Here we are back with Conscious Conversations, and Maggie Steele has joined me again. And I'm so glad that you're here, Maggie, because I loved talking to you last time, and you're such a dear friend of mine. So, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I'm always excited to
Me
talk to you.
too. So, we are going to talk about triggers. That's the main theme. And as we know, many triggers start from childhood. And so I thought I would read an angel prayer. It's called Prayer for Children. Archangel Michael, I ask that you stay by my children's sides all day, every day, to protect them from outside influences. I ask that you give them strength and support during times when they are struggling. Thank you for protecting my children, my heart and soul. And so it is. And so prayer for children, all the children outside of us, and also the inner child in us as well. And we will see where this conversation takes us because you are just a new first time mother as well. So what's coming up for you right now?
I'm just grateful for prayer. I'm grateful for my deep knowing in that I'm not alone on this journey and that I can reach out for support and prayer. And yeah, just you reading that is just a reminder. I mean, I think like so many of us, right, we get lost in the story of how things are awful or whatever it is that's whirling around our minds. And I recently was in that space and I tapped back into my inner knowing and asked for guidance and support. And yeah, I'm just grateful to be kind of shifting out of that space. And it like happens again and again. So I'm just very aware of that and grateful and yeah, this human journey, right?
I totally agree with what you're saying. And I actually think that paths, one of the biggest transitions from childhood into adolescence into adulthood is all about really facing these, as we're calling them, triggers, facing these stories that we have really come to know as being so true for us because it's what we so believe in, because we were shown that way or experienced that way. And it's a big thing to really, first of all, acknowledge that they're there, know what they are, be able to articulate them, and see how they're actually showing up in your adult life. And for me, it was even a tiny wee example was that as a child, I always had to ask permission for everything. And I always had to ask, please, can I? Please, may I? And as an adult, years and years and years later, I'd be in job situations and I would always ask permission, like, can I, may I, is that okay? And it wasn't until other women actually would turn to me and say, why are you asking me this? Why are you asking for permission to do this? Just do it. And I was like, oh my gosh, you mean I can? Like, I'm allowed? So I find that really interesting. As a child growing up, it was very restrictive. It was very
Mm-hmm.
restrictive for me to feel like I always had to ask permission. There are always going to be things that are passed along that affect us in a certain way, especially if we're sensitive beings, if we're a sensitive
Mm-hmm.
child. So, what do
Yeah.
you have to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I just it's so true that so many of the experiences that we have contribute to these stories that are unconsciously guiding us in our behaviors, in our decisions, in our interactions with other people, right? So we may not even be aware that this experience is contributing to how we experience life in this now, right, in our current reality. And I mean, when we're talking about triggers, I feel like so many of those stories or experiences are, they leave wounds that are, if left unattended, are open wounds. They haven't healed, right?
Mhm.
That are then susceptible to other people's um, stories. Other people, are reactive to our wounds, and then we're triggered, right? We trigger each other. And I'm very aware right now of the parts of me that are finite and like separate selves that get hurt in the midst of, you know, a situation. And I'm trying, as I've been for years, but really, really focusing right now in my life on like having real compassion for that finite self, however old she is in that moment, that part of me that is so hurt by what this other person has done, or was so frustrated or angry at what this other person has done. And and remembering that it's just a tiny finite part of me that is actually not me. It's not me that's being reactive. It's not me that's being triggered. And I'm not saying to not take responsibility for how I react, because there's clear repercussions if I am hurtful to somebody else because I've been triggered, right? I want to take responsibility for that. But what I mean is like not believing that hurt self is who I am, if that makes sense. I'm more than that hurt self.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that I don't know if you've heard the phrase, feelings are not facts. And I really love that because we can really think and believe certain things about ourselves. And again, when I say that, is actually it's all so self-centered. Like these feelings that we have about ourselves, like woe is me, and how I'm struggling and I'm suffering, it's all about me and I, and it's very self-centered. And when I first heard that, I was really quite taken aback. I thought, oh my gosh, like this is me being self-centered, but I'm the one that's feeling hurt, or I'm the one that's having a problem here with something that's going on. But if you really think about it, this is when I really, really trust in crossing paths with people, forming relationships with people, people showing up in our lives that are there and they act as direct mirrors to help us heal the wounds that we have to heal. And when we are mature enough to feel grounded in what's happening, instead of being reactive, feeling like a victim, it's so healing, it's so cathartic, and we can then have the thing that we had to have happen, get hurt, feel terrible, maybe angry, maybe even resentful. And then when we can step above that or outside of that and have a connection with that person and a healing and a conversation, even possibly that might feel a little confronting, then quite often you end up feeling really connected to that person, and they can become a really good friend or a close friend because you've been through this thing together, because the chances are if you're feeling it, they are too. And if they're not feeling it, that person has shown up directly on my path to help me in some way. And so when I can look at life in that way, it's so much more meaningful, and it makes me accept that there is this game of life happening, this game
Mm.
of life where we've all come in, we're in a physical body, we're able to live a life of creation and things that we manifest, and using our senses and our skills and our uniqueness to make things happen in the world. And we're playing this game and we're learning as we go. And yeah, you know, like a game where you have three lives and then you're out or you die. But this is like you're given chances over and over and over again, like these old school video games where the character never dies. They might get splat, but then the next thing you just start again and you do you run the level again, and you try and jump over the box or slide under the bridge or dodge the scary dragon, and then you get eaten up and you die again, but then you get up again and you start again. So as I'm saying this, I'm saying this because we actually just got an old school video game. We were playing it on the Xbox the other day, and I never play video games, but this one I'm really enjoying because it's quite easy, and it's helping me just kind of like get into the I guess trying to work with the joystick and just play this game with Sean. But as a metaphor for life, it's amazing because it actually shows me how video games can actually really train the brain and really give you that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make this happen. I figured that bit out now. Oh, now I'm going to do this. Now I'm going to make this work. Now I know to jump over that when it comes. Now I know to climb under it. Now I know to smash that guy in the head. So in the video game. So I veered off a little bit, but the point is, I really believe that we come together with certain people that have no idea what your wounds are, which is why it's so incredible. They have no idea what your wounds are. They don't know what your lessons are that you need to learn. They're just showing up being them with all their stuff, as you said, their stories. And then it's coming into contact with you and your stories. And quite often, there's a big healing to happen.
Hmm. Oh my gosh, so much gratitude for everything you just shared. I just love the like the reminder that that we're engaged in this game of life, and
Mhm.
that there are, what a gift to have infinite opportunities over and over again to heal the parts of us that are hurting in a moment, so that we can experience more joy. And I mean, what you mentioned, the joystick. I mean, that's hilarious, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's just so like, it's like, yes, like, like the whole thing that's navigating this the whole time is joy. It's like we think we're looking for joy, but joy is literally that, it's there the entire time, and we're just like forgetting that it's there, which is also something that I'm very present to with the pandemic, with the political climate, and just so much hurt and wounds
Mm.
in on a macro level, um, and then working with my own individual wounds. I lose sight of the fact that there is joy always, and it's just kind of covered up, or we're not able to see it in that moment. Um, yeah, I could say more, but please.
No, I was just going to say there's always the easy option to look at why things are just terrible and why life sucks and how difficult everything is. And it's so easy to look outside of ourselves to what we see with our human eyes, what is actually happening in front of us, which of course you can't ignore and you don't want to ignore it. It's just, it is a victim mentality to always look outside yourself and tell yourself how you're suffering and you're struggling because of the A, B, and C. And it's a choice, it's a conscious choice to come back to yourself and to really think, what can I do for myself in this situation? What can I learn from this? And what can I do to help myself stay grounded and stay of use and stay of value to myself and to other people? And when you can shift from that and really, again, step into the whole concept of it's a game of life, that there's always going to be things that happen. There's always going to be the baddies. There's always going to be the traps. There's always going to be the things that are um, just keep happening over and over again until we learn. I'm loving this metaphor of the video
Me too.
game because as I'm speaking right now, I'm kind of seeing this on the screen, like in my mind I'm seeing this video game, and I didn't know this was going to come up today, but it's really that is what it is. And what if the whole point of being here in this on Earth, which is a lower frequency, a lower level to maybe other places, other planets, other galaxies, that we come here to Earth to learn what we've got to learn, to really learn, first of all, to love ourselves unconditionally, really love ourselves, which so many of us find so hard to do. And then to really take that love and learn to love others. And at the end of your life, it's like, what did I do here when I was here? How was I treating myself? How was I treating other people? And then you leave your suitcases and your bags and your baggage on Earth, and off you go to a lighter place. What if that's what it's all about? What if that's the game of life? And in the meantime, that's why when I say look for the silver lining, it's not just like be positive and be happy and willy-nilly. It's not about that. It's really, what can I do with the things that I feel are happening to me and turn them around so that I feel that they're happening for me? And then progress in life with all these lessons and gifts that I'm given to be able to really live a life of joy. And we need our triggers. Our triggers are there to help us evolve as we expand and we grow and we learn more. Our triggers become less and less, and we are
Yes.
able to feel more grounded.
Yeah, and I think that shift in perspective of like, we are triggered in a moment or activated in some way. It's like rather than it being this thing that bulldozes us or pulls us into this, tornado or whirlpool, or like, and suddenly we're overwhelmed by it. can it be like a shift in perspective of like, thank you, I am triggered, like let me explore this further. And obviously in a given moment our nervous system, we're off and running, fight, flight, freeze, faint, right? But when we can get some space from that place and we can come back to a more grounded, centered place for our nervous system, we can then kind of reflect and kind of unpack what was it that triggered us in that moment, so that we can do that through journaling, we can do that through asking for support, prayer, but really finding out what was the source of that initial pain that caused that activation, that caused that trigger, so that we can heal the part of us, that finite self I mentioned before. So that should that happen again, maybe it's on not as intense, or maybe it doesn't even affect us as much.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process. At least for me, I can attest to that, it being a process.
Absolutely. And I really agree with that being a process. And I also think that when you're initially triggered and it really hits you and you're feeling so uncomfortable or so anxious or so angry or whatever, fill in the blank, once you start recognizing that and you have the tools and you know how to release it from your body, like I was talking to Anita Kress a few conversations ago about doing automatic stress responses and releasing things from your body as a healing modality, to let go of the things that are unwanted, to let go of the energies. And once you start practicing and doing the work on your trigger, I will then react a lot less, or even not react at all when it happens, because I've cleared it from my system. So it's no longer mine. And if I'm met with something like a response or something that doesn't feel 100% loving kindness, then I can really recognize that as not my stuff. That's not my stuff, and I'm not pulled in by it. And as long as I've still got bits and pieces that I still need to sort out in myself, I'm going to be pulled in by it. So that's how I know for myself, once I've cleared something like that, that things that maybe a family member or a partner, because usually it's the people that are closest to us, that, or even a colleague that we see every day, that are the ones that really push our buttons, because they are so close to us and they are in our lives all the time. And so with practice and with more healing, you can still let them be themselves, and you can just practice. I'm saying you, I mean we can just keep doing the work on ourselves until eventually that trigger, or that need or want, that surge of reaction has dissipated, it's
Mm-hmm.
calmed, and it's no longer there anymore. And we just look at that person and we either see them with compassion, or we think, oh, it's so interesting, that actually used to bother me, but now it doesn't.
To go back to your point of like that we are all mirrors for each other, I think I had this moment the other day where I was like, I had this thought. I'm like, why are they taking this so personally? And it was like I was really frustrated with the fact that it was being taken so personally. And I was like, okay, if this is a mirror, then how often am I taking things personally, right? And like I'm like, wow, this is fascinating, because I'm so frustrated that they're taking it so personally, and not able to just like see it as an objective, just a thought. And so that was really, it's not easy to see the mirrors, I think. And if you're actively engaged in this game of life, knowing that everything is, like you said, for me, it can be really interesting.
Two things just came up. I hope I remember them. Two things just came up. Number one, The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yes.
So simple, but so difficult to follow. Don't take things personally. Always do your best. Don't make assumptions, and be impeccable with your word. And these four agreements are, I read the book. I was blown away by it. I thought, oh, this is easy. I've got this. And I think probably after day two, even maybe in the first day when I was thinking, right, I'm going to do this, it was so difficult to just like follow these four things. So the lessons that are presented to us on an ongoing level are just, they're abundant. There's so many things that we can just always learn and grow and really look at ourselves. And yeah, when you look in the mirror, if you look in the mirror, then you actually are seeing you're not seeing the true soul of who you are unless you really, really focus on, like, your intention is to look so behind your eyes that you see your soul, that you don't even see your body so much anymore. You're connecting so much with your soul. And it's a really incredible exercise to do, to stare at a mirror long enough that you go past the eyes and past the out, outward visual, that you really start connecting with something so deep within you that you feel like your soul is staring back at you. And I did this a number of times a few years ago, and it was very, very powerful. And so when you say, you've got the mirror and you're staring right at you and you don't see it, yeah, a lot of the time we don't see it. And the other thing I was going to say was that Krishna Das, who I always talk about, talks about the fact that, is it Krishna Das? I think they all talk about, all the spiritual leaders that I absolutely love following, Michael Bernard Beckwith, the sense of being separate. Yeah, as KD, he does talk about this, the sense of the illusion that we all as human beings have, that we're separate from other, like that person's over there, I'm over here, we're separate. And then the spiritual masters and gurus talk about how we're all one. And yeah, intellectually and conceptually, that's pretty easy to see. Like, we're all energy, we're all part of the trees and the plants and by each other. I mean, that is not easy. And as long as the person over there is separate from me and outside of me and away from, then we are always going to have a lot to learn. And who knows if it's even possible to even have that sense of oneness as as long as we're living as a human being in a physical body, with all our egos and our things that we feel that we need for security and to help us navigate ourselves through this life. But that's another thing, that, when you see yourself as separate or other, and then you make the other person different from me or wrong from me. And he talks about noticing the difference between the role and the soul. Like, everyone has a soul, and our souls are identical because they're all made of like energy. But the roles that we play in life are that I'm, student, you are teacher, or I am daughter, you are mother. And with these roles have all these different layers. And so you can always make the choice to look past the role that you're seeing or that you're placing on the other person and connect from soul to soul. But again, that is huge practice.
Well, I think that is a huge part of why I practice mindfulness, is to assist me in being able to see others as an extension of myself, which, going back to triggers, is like, how can I invite this person into my world rather than be repelling them away from me because of this activation that has happened, right? So um, I one thing that comes up for me is, you said I'm a new mom, and I can already tell that my amazing little being is here to teach me a lot.
Oh.
Um, but she, yeah, I have this little baby, and
Hmm.
just hearing her cry, just like I imagine many parents out there, it's just, there's an immediate response in my body, and just an immediate, like, oh no, like, this is not good. I need to stop her crying. I need to help her. She's in pain. Like, there's this immediate, like, reactivity that happens. And I noticed early on, she's almost 9 months now, but probably around when she was 4 months, that when I went to her in this state of activation,
Mm-hmm.
like, like, I'm trying to, like, calm her, and I'm like this, and she was activated as well. And so when I noticed this process, I was able to, like, come back to myself, see what was happening, and soften, like, tend to my heart, tend to the part of me that was so worried and nervous and scared for this little beautiful baby. And so when I started to soften and care for myself, that softening allowed me to then tend to her with softness,
Mm.
and it gave her space to be however she was. Maybe she continued to cry, maybe she kind of relaxed. It doesn't matter. The point is that I was able to be with her
Mm.
through my softness, whereas in the other way, I couldn't be with her.
Mm,
And I think that lesson for me is so, so poignant, because it's like, it doesn't matter whether it's your child, your friend, your mom, your boyfriend, your whoever, you are going to be triggered, and how can you kind of turn your attention inward, soften, so that you can receive them and be with them with softness.
oh, amen. I absolutely love what you just said, because it's all about self-responsibility. It's all about owning your shit and not putting it onto your children, not projecting it onto other people. But for a lot of people that really are working on themselves in that way, where you're really triggered a lot or you need to take responsibility for yourself, it is actually one of the pillars of freedom. Again, from the Michael Bernard Beckwith course that I did, there's 4 pillars of freedom. I wonder if I can remember them. There's self-responsibility, there's self-awareness, there's self-remembrance, and there is self-discipline, and they all happen like simultaneously. There's not an order. But when you can master these 4 things, then your spirit is like free. You're actually free to just be and live your life. And I heard this incredible thing as well. I might have shared this with you as well. I talk a lot, so much I know about Christian Das and Michael Bernard Beckwith. It's because I've been studying with them both through the pandemic, and they've really brought so much richness and awareness to my life. With parents or with your mum or your dad, your child feels about themselves the way the parent feels about themselves. So I think I've mentioned this to you before, that
Mm-hmm.
when it's not, you can tell your kid till you're blue in the face, like, I love you, you're beautiful, you're the best in the world, or you're safe, don't worry, I believe that you're safe. Meanwhile, you're feeling absolutely terrified, or meanwhile,
Mm-hmm.
you feel terrible about yourself. So your child is getting the message of how you and sees and learns from, like, cognitively, what my mom or what my dad feels about themselves is how I will then feel about myself. And that's why a lot of the things that I believe, when you grow up and you've got these triggers, they're not yours a lot of the time. They were passed on to you or passed down to you, maybe from your parents or their parents or their parents, the ancestral line. And it's very much about being that example and that role model for not just your child, but for everyone in your life and for yourself, to really learn to love yourself, so that other people can then see what that's like and learn to love themselves and have that respect for themselves. So I know that took a long time to say, but do you have anything
I
to add?
Oh my gosh, I just think that that's all, that's the work that I am so deeply committed to doing, because I know it's a process,
Mm,
and but I can feel those moments where I'm like struggling with myself,
mhm,
but claiming safety and care and love for her.
mhm,
um, and it's not in alignment, so it feels like, yeah, I need to be okay first and foremost with me. And I've always, and you've known me for so long, I feel like I've been working on myself for so many years. And there can be a point where it's just like, seriously, still, like, this is just so, like, don't I get some sort of like award for like working this hard on myself, right? Um, and or like hoping that there's some sort of magic pill out there that will, you know, inject me with unconditional love for myself. And it's just not like that. It's a journey, it's a process. And if anybody's listening to this and feels like, oh well, they've got it all figured out, look at them, and it's like, I just want to own that this is a journey for me, and it continues.
Absolutely. I mean, that is the whole thing. That's the game of life. So, if every day is a brand new day and we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know how we're going to feel the next day. I mean, one of the things that we can do is we can build momentum, as Abraham Hicks talks about. We can build momentum, and the more you put your attention to, the more that's going to gather more. A rolling stone gathers no moss, and you just I've said that for so many years. A rolling stone gathers no moss, but you just you keep going, and your energy circulates and it builds, and then if you're on this onwards and upwards vibration and energy and living in alignment, the chances are you're going to wake up each morning and feeling like, yay, it's a brand new day. But if day after day it's really difficult and it's just like you feel like you're going down the tubes and there's nothing positive that you can think about and it's just so hard all the time, that's going to also build momentum. And that's very often in my life when I've had times of feeling depressed and completely fatigued and just no energy and no inspiration. It's such a dark place to be. And every day it's like Groundhog Day. It's like, oh, there we go again. What's the point in even
Yeah.
getting out of bed? Like I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with the world today. And we've all been there. But again, it's like you don't know what the joy is and the light is until you've experienced the dark and the doom and gloom. So again, it's just that game. It's like getting knocked down, getting hit on the head, getting blown up, and then being like, oh, okay, I've got to dust it off. I've got to just hit play and start again and give it another shot. And yeah, we are going to be learning for the rest of our lives until we leave our bodies. And that's why sometimes if I can remind myself that this is a game or it's a game of life, and that doesn't mean I'm not going to take it seriously, but it also means that we don't have to take it too seriously, that it is just so unbelievably painful and awful and dark and miserable every moment. Like it doesn't have to be that way. We can really take what we're learning and we can understand, oh my gosh, this is here right now, presented to me, even if it feels the worst thing ever. It's presented to me so that I can learn from it and grow and expand and help someone else and teach people. And every person that has written a bestseller book that's in the spiritual world, like Neil Donald Walsh, even Tony Robbins, Rhonda Byrne, the secret, even Lorna Byrne, like the angel lady that we went to hear speak, amazing. They've all had above average trauma, putting their hands in the air and surrendering and saying, you know what, God, universe, I can't do this anymore. I can't. I'm done. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to turn. I'm on my knees here. And out of that, many of them will then start channeling, or they'll get an answer, or they'll write a book, or they start teaching people, or something happens that just kind of wakes them up, or it snaps their perspective, makes them see something different and realign the whole situation. And everyone's got their own story, but you read so many books about that and you see that we're here for such a short time on earth, and what we're going to do with this time. And if we can just, it also reminds me of being surprised about death, like, oh, they passed away, or oh my goodness, this is so sad, it's terrible. That's the game of life as well. Like it's going to happen to all of us when it happens. And yet as humans and in our existence, we don't talk about it, we don't think about it, we will avoid it at all costs and are surprised when it happens, and it's part of the game.
Mm.
So I don't know if this is landing properly, but
No,
um,
it's true. It's just it's like it is part of the game of life. Like people will pass, and it's just so painful
painful,
because
so
of
painful.
just like the the relationships that are formed, the attachment that
The
is
attachment.
created, the
Yeah.
security that many relationships symbolize, and how destabilizing it can be. And I mean, I'll be the first to say, like, there's so many, like, I've experienced death, and it's like the fear of losing someone is still so strong. Like,
Mm.
knowing that I'm still here, I'm okay. Like, that person passed, and I'm okay. I'm still here. It's like still, it doesn't change.
The
Yeah,
void.
that yeah,
The void.
the concern that somebody else will pass and I won't be able to handle it, that kind of thing.
Mm. Yes, it's you said it, it's the attachment that we have as human beings. And yet we come into the world on our own and we leave on our own and we come in blissful with not a care in the world, whole and healthy and complete. And even those babies that maybe come into the world that that don't have their full health as we can see, like to look on that, there's still this beautiful child being of God. And on some level, their soul is complete and healthy, and yeah, maybe their physical body is not, but there's something about just our attachment as human beings, and how real it is, and how we really don't think we can cope with another person not being there, and we dread thinking about, oh my gosh, I've been there too, like what's going to happen when this person passes, what am I going to do, how am I going to deal with this? And yet it could be years away, it could be, you know, it could be next week, it could be in 10 or 15 years. But again, it's like future tripping. We're going way,
Hmm.
way away from the present moment where all the power is, as Louise Hay says. And it's just another part of being human, that we are so, connected and attached to not just other people, but anything material, anything that we think that we need, that we can hold on to, like money, like our house, like our car. I mean, it goes from really small things to really big things. I mean, I remember losing an article of clothing that I had when I was like years ago, probably like a teenager, and it was one of my most favorite tops. And I was absolutely gutted when I realized it had been thrown out. I was like, oh my gosh, like anyway, something just tiny like that, that we can get
Yes,
so possessive about, that can
yes.
really cause a commotion inside of us. Like, but I that was my favorite top. Like so and so gave it to me. I can't believe I've lost it, or or someone threw it away, or whatever it is, And when you can look,
Hmm.
step aside from that or step back from it, it's quite funny. There's humor there too. I wanted to actually
Yes,
say, I know that you told me in the past you've watched This Is Us.
yes.
And I just watched the first episode of the newest season of season
Mhm.
6. Have you seen it?
Hmm.
You saw it,
Oh yeah.
the
Mhm.
brand new one, right? I'm totally sobbing. I'm watching it and I'm totally sobbing. And one of the most bizarre things, I mean, it was really bizarre for me to watch this TV show that I've been watching 5 seasons, following it and loving it. And the writing is so incredible, so good. And here I am turning on the show, so excited that it's back, bit of escapism from my world right now. And they're wearing masks and they're talking about COVID, and they're talking about Black Lives Matter and how deeply it's affecting Randall, like one of the characters. And I'm watching this show and I'm like, oh my God, this is so depressing. This is actually life. This is what life is. Like, if we want to focus on that right now. And I had this sudden feeling that I was almost like so separate from, because they were on my TV screen. And part of me was like, okay, I feel a bit like I'm an alien right now, watching these humans and how life is for these humans on Earth. And they have to wear masks, and they have to socially distance. And gosh, their world is so messed up right now, because I just couldn't believe what I was seeing and how relevant it was. What do you think about that?
I think there comes a point where it's like we talked about how as humans, like we are so wired to like differentiate ourselves from others and
Mhm.
or like see each other as separate, right?
Mm.
And I think like when you're commenting on this, is like I'm seeing these, actors, and they're like humans on earth, and this is like so bizarre. It's like there has to be a little bit of um I think space, so that we can see our behaviors, we can see things without being locked into it, because when we're consumed by it, we can't see clearly. So I think that having some space to see the processes at play is so important for healing, for connecting, for any sort of like, yeah, supportive next step forward.
Compassion.
um yes, but at the same time, I also feel like it's so important to like engage and engage in some form of deep like inquiry around like how we contribute to the harm that is potentially being caused within our society, whether that's through systemic racism or policies, or it's like how having that observer view is really important. And like once we see the process and we can see our own conditioning, our own programming, it's like how can we start to engage with that and dismantle that so that we can start to see each other as connected and not separate, and contribute to more of a compassionate world.
So I'm actually holding back tears right now because oh, I find that so sad. I find that whole show so sad because just the fact that he's got a white sister and she adores him, but they're having that whole thing between them, and just how just how deeply impacted we are as human beings with all the things that go on around us in life, and especially under all the things that are happening in the world right now, and just seeing it played out in front of you in a TV show that you absolutely love, and just I just felt so sad for the world in that moment, more than I do in my real life, in my general everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw it being played out in front of me, I just felt I just had a real moment of deep compassion and real sadness, and yet I can still it doesn't wash away all the joy that I have in my life, or the what I talk about, seeing the silver lining, because there are so many lessons to learn. But just allowing, I really believe that that show, exactly what you just said, it gave the space to watch on film what it looks like with people that I really care about, even though I don't know them and they're a family that the show's about. I feel like they're part of my life, as you do when you really love a TV show. Um, but it really gave me the space to watch it and see it happening to people that I care about, that I love, and be totally helpless, and not even want to try and fix it, because you can't fix it. You just got to let people experience what they experience. And just the intimacy of the relationship that we have to self, like when you've done something that might have hurt someone's feelings, but you can't bring yourself to say you're sorry, and
Oh,
with every fiber of your being you want to say I'm sorry, but maybe the time has passed, or you feel embarrassed or silly, and yet the words just still don't come out, and you're like, oh, just apologize, just say sorry, get for yourself, say it for yourself, so you can clear your channels, clear your body from this energy that's it's like a an elephant in the room, you know.
I I have to read you. I had something like kind of come through me the other day that I wrote down that speaks to what you're talking about, and it's just a how to. So I'll just leave this with you and folks if it speaks to them. But the question is like, how can I know myself as love when I feel blocked or hard, like my heart is closed? So it's like that experience of like wanting to apologize, wanting to be loving, wanting to, and just locked up. Like it's just like what's preventing this?
Oh.
And the what was said was step toward the way that you'd like to be. Step
Mm,
toward the way that you'd like to be. This is the doorway into the truth. By taking a step toward that way of being, you will begin to recognize that is actually your true self, and that the hardened heart or the closed heart you are referring to is an illusion. It's
mm.
not you. It's a separate self that tricks you into thinking you are that. Trust that you are not and move toward it.
That's exactly what we've been speaking about this whole conversation. I love it. Where did that come from?
That was me asking for guidance, and it came through.
Oh, Maggie, thank you so much for sharing that. That's so beautiful, so deep, and so wise. You're such a wise being. I love that. I love that channeled piece of information that you got. I love that. That's the end. That's all we have time for. Can you
Mhm.
believe it? The time goes so fast in these conversations, and I wanted to keep this one running because it's very topical, and there's just yeah, a lot to talk about, and I'm sure we will continue this conversation. So thank you so much for this wonderful conscious conversation, and I love you
Thanks,
very much.
Madeline. Love you.
Bye,
I
Maggie.